What I love with Prokofiev music is that it sounds so much like ballet. I mean, he wrote also Romeo and Juliet, and it's just for me one of the most beautiful pieces. I listened to it when I was a teenager, and then afterwards I started to study the concertos, and I could find so many similarities.
When I think about Romeo and Juliet, I think about the same thing as Ravel, a slightly distanced man and composer finding a subject matter that allows him to be completely emotionally engaged. And I think that Romeo and Juliet and this violin concerto sit side by side in that. His language, his beautiful, sometimes distancing language, sometimes completely volcanic, which in the violin concerto he manages to distill into this extraordinarily crafted, not long concerto, but so full of range and beauty. But I think in this piece there is something. I mean, Daphnis had been written, over 10 years earlier, and people were aware of this landscape. Prokofiev accesses something Ravelian, certainly at the very beginning and the end of the piece in this. In between there are those quirky, slightly effete scherzi that are really Prokofiev's hallmarks. But the framing of this piece is actually quite a romantic language. The thing that obsesses me about all music is narrative, and I struggle actually with pieces where I can't find this feeling of journey from beginning to end. The opportunity to do the complete Daphnis and Chloe by Ravel is, I'm not going to say once in a lifetime because I did it in London about a month ago, but it's one of those unmissable things in the concert repertoire, one of the great masterpieces. And we often only hear the what's called the second suite, which is the third part of the ballet. That's pretty well known to concert audiences, but to have this whole extraordinary mythic and emotional journey is a privilege for us as performers and the audience too. What I find intoxicating about the piece is there is this surface narrative, but the emotional resonance and gravity underneath that surface story is completely overwhelming. It is of course connected to what that very simple, somehow almost childlike story is, but underneath that, this emotional undertow is completely extraordinary, and that's what I love about the piece. What you get from a performance of Daphnis and Chloe with a great orchestra, as we will have with the Sydney Symphony, is an emotional journey that is like no other, and you experience what the textures in an orchestra can really do, from the most tranquil sounds, the opening pedal, just a single note with the double basses and timpani, through to some of the greatest virtuosic playing. I mean, the final bacchanal it's really one of the great moments of ecstasy in all classical music.
I always love so much to play with the musicians of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, because many of them I know since a long time, and every time when I come back there's such a warmth and happiness in this orchestra, which is really, really unique. I mean, it was again like playing with lots of friends, like having fun together, and always on such a high level of playing.